Hey friends, welcome back. Super excited to bring forward a little bit of a new subject for you on this episode, and that is all about the number one way to shift your hormones into a healthier place. I get questions all the time. What essential oil should I use to help balance my hormones? Or will this essential oil help with my hot flashes? Will this essential oil help with my PMS? I also get questions about herbs. Is there a specific herb I should be using to help my cycles go better? But you guys, here's what is happening right now. And if you are not a female, maybe you feel like this episode is not for you, but I want to challenge you to send this to the women in your life, because nearly every single woman that I am talking to at this point in 2020, we are nearly to the end of the year. At the recording of this episode, it is December 8th, and every single female I am talking to is mentioning strange aberrations in her cycle. Whether that is weird spotting, whether it's luteal phase defects, whether it's breast tenderness that they don't normally have, maybe the periods are bringing a lot of excess cramping and just symptoms that they don't typically have. This is what I personally am experiencing, and this is what I'm hearing from a lot of women right now, is that most of us are experiencing some kind of disruption in our cycle. What I feel is happening is that at this point in 2020, COVID has caught up with us, especially those of us who have been at home for a long time with our families at close quarters, maybe working from home. Is this resonating with you at all? Have you noticed any changes in your cycle? So I want to share with you a little bit about my story, because a lot of my story started with trying to figure out my hormones. And this goes back, 10, 15 years ago, when I started to notice my cycle changing and not for the better. And I couldn't figure out what was going on. I felt like I was living a healthy lifestyle. I shouldn't be having the cramping that I was. I shouldn't be having the level of PMS that I was. I was feeling sorry for my husband having to deal with me in that state, and also feeling really, really helpless because I could intellectually understand that I shouldn't have been acting the way that I was, but I literally could not stop. Anybody feel me on this? Is anybody feeling me on this right now? So that is why this week on all of my content, I am focusing on hormone health for women. And specifically, I want to share with you the number one thing that shifted my hormone health. And I'm going to tell you all the things I did before that only nominally shifted things for me. So I thought, okay, I need to manage stress hormones. And so I would focus on stress hormones, but I would see not a lot of improvement in my female hormonal health. I would go to the doctor and I would get all the scans, and I would have my thyroid checked, and they would check this and they would check that and they would check nutrients, and nothing was really showing up. I thought that I was supposed to go to my doctor to fix this. They just said they wanted to put me on birth control, and I was not cool with that, so that was not going to be an option for me. Then I thought, okay, well, maybe I need to completely change how I eat. So I tried to be vegan, and I know that veganism is a lifestyle that works for many of us, and I've written and also talked about before how I very much admire that. But for the particular genetics that I have, which are real fun, being vegan made me even worse. I got even irritable. My hormones got even worse. I was exhausted, and I struggled and I struggled and I struggled. Then I tried supplementation. I just was at that point spitballing. I was trying products off the shelf at my health food store to see if anything would help. And I would notice a little bit of change, but I wouldn't notice a substantial change very quickly. And so I would give up on those herbal protocols probably before they had a chance to take effect. And then one happy day, I met my guardian angel, Dr. Beth Westy. And she taught me that the number one thing that we can do for our hormones is to learn to eat for our cycle. You see, so much of the messaging that we get in our culture is that the female body is gross or bad, and that we need to fundamentally change who we are, that we're not able to fully embrace our bodies and what our femininity means. We, as a result, carry a lot of shame around that is internalized. That is another layer that a person has to unpack when they start working on hormonal health. Because a big part of hormonal health is learning to accept our body and realizing that our body is in fact not here to work against us, but when we can partner with our body and when we can work with nature and with the nature of our cycle, this can really shift things for us. Now, if you're hearing what I'm saying, and if you've been listening to me for a while, or you've been reading any of my materials, or you follow me on social, you know a big thing that I talk about is strengthening our relationship with nature. And when we look at permaculture, we look at regenerative agriculture, we look at a lot of the lifestyles that are becoming very popular right now in our current climate, we notice that there is a common thread between all of these things, and that is that when we partner with nature, rather than fighting against nature, we can often find extra leverage for our wellness. So after trying all of these things, after doing essential oils, after doing herbs, after trying to change my lifestyle, manage my stress levels, not really seeing a change in my hormones, things kept getting worse over time. When Dr. Beth Westy was talking to me about just changing my nutrition and everything was going to shift, I was like, no freaking way. There's no way that changing my nutrition is going to make that big of a difference in my cycle. And I was extremely skeptical. I was already doing intermittent fasting. I was already eating a very anti-inflammatory diet. I really thought, what else can I possibly change that is going to make that big of a difference for my cycle? At this time, I was having debilitating pain, not just during my period, but also during ovulation. And my female hormone management had kind of started to take over my life, especially when it came to managing my irritability and my lack of desire to engage in life for a couple of weeks every month. And that was enough to push me to look more at what she was saying. So Dr. Beth Westy has been working with female hormones for her entire career. She is a chiropractor, also a nutrition expert. She has training in Eastern medicine as well, as do I. And so I started to look at what she was talking about from an Eastern medicine standpoint. And she started to talk about the difference between cooling foods and warming foods, which simply means the energetics of something. Some of this is like really obvious stuff, like hot chili peppers are hot, and maybe a cold green salad is cold, but there's much more that goes into it than that. Our female body is not the same day to day. Like at all. Every single day it's different because every single day our hormones are shifting and changing for the next thing that the body needs to do. It's always preparing for the next thing. So because of that, we need to change and shift our eating and our lifestyle according to where we are in our cycle. And at first this seemed very overwhelming to me, but when I started to see it as simply an alteration between two sides of the coin, on one, we're doing more of a cooling, anti-inflammatory lifestyle for half the month. On the other, we're doing more of a warming, I wouldn't say pro-inflammatory, but maybe a little bit more heating protocol for the second half of the month. That was something that I was like, okay, that makes sense to me from the sense of Chinese medicine and from the sense of Ayurveda and what they teach us about the cycle of the seasons, how we need to shift our lifestyle. I've talked about a lot of these things in previous podcasts, so you can go back and listen to them. So I decided to try Dr. Beth's 12-week program, and what this involves is a full 12-week group coaching program where she teaches you for the course of that many weeks. So how many cycles do we get out of that? 12 weeks, we get 3 to 4 cycles, depending on how long your cycle is, out of that, to experiment with this idea of eating for your cycle. This also works for people that are not cycling regularly. So if you're a PCOS person, or even if you are in menopause already and you're not having a regular cycle, you can still use the same principles that she teaches in this to help you to balance your hormones, simply by what you are eating. It sounds crazy, but it really works. So I did this 12-week program. I didn't necessarily even do this to lose weight, but I did lose 12 pounds, I believe, over the course of the program. And what I noticed is that as I learned how to eat for where I was in my cycle, I had some big shifts emotionally and mentally. I started to not feel like my body was in charge of me. I started to feel like I was in charge of my body. I started to feel a lot more empowered because I noticed that as I shifted my nutrition, my body responded, and it responded actually a lot more quickly than I expected. I started to not have a lot of those negative symptoms every month. I started to not feel so irritable, and for me, that was one of the things that was so disruptive to my life. And I started to notice that through the course of those 12 weeks, I felt much more of a sense of partnership with my body, and I started feeling like I didn't have to believe the narrative of culture that as a woman, my body is a ticking time bomb where something bad could happen at any second. Because of doing this program, I continued this lifestyle of eating for my cycle. Now it's been 4 years doing that, and I can tell you that almost always my cycle is pretty much a non-event for me. It's something I don't typically have to think about a lot unless I've been under a tremendous amount of stress or unless I've had some unexpected toxic exposure. Those are two things that I notice will affect me. When it happens, I just tighten up and tweak my protocol a little bit more. And after a month or two, things tend to regulate pretty quickly. So what I can say from that is because I'm noticing some aberrant symptoms for me with my cycle, I can really know that I am experiencing more stress than normal, even though my circumstance is nowhere near as difficult as some of your circumstances are. Even with that, I'm noticing that my body is no longer reacting to the entire situation of the world very well. And that shows up for me typically first in my cycle, in my female hormones, in my endocrine health. So, all of this to say that I'm very excited because I can offer you a little bit of a discount on Dr. Beth's 12-week program. And if this is something that sounds like you want to check out, you can get all of the information here. Go to bit.ly/hormonehealthnow, and you can listen to the commercial that I'm going to be putting into this podcast. It'll give you the coupon code that you can use for a discount on that program. And if you aren't sure if this is for you, Dr. Beth is actually going to be on my next podcast, and we're going to be talking about the top things that she wishes that all women could know, especially right now about COVID, about how they can start to take back some of their power with their body, even though we feel that we are lacking so much power in so many other ways in our life and just in life right now. So do check for that podcast. It's also going to be released this week. We're going to be recording it tomorrow. But for now, I want you to go over to bit.ly/hormonehealthnow. It should have all of the details that you need to know to get enrolled in Dr. Beth's 12-week program. And so I'm super excited for you to be able to experience this truth. And that truth is that when you change your nutrition to work with your body, to work with your cycle, you might be surprised how beautifully your body responds to support you in return. That's what I have for you today. If you've enjoyed this today, please comment, like, subscribe, hit that notification bell. And if you're listening on your podcast app, I do always appreciate those 5-star reviews, and I will see you next time.